Hey everyone, this is Renee Sayo. This is for my LTI number 1, and some of the things that I have just kind of been learning about, um, mostly about the Family Life Education program. Um, One of the questions that we were asked to kind of ponder about is, in what capacity do you see yourself getting involved with strengthening marriage and family through FLE? And I've actually thought a lot about this, especially in the last couple of days when people have asked me, what do you want to do with your degree? And at first, I just kind of told them I want to go into counseling, but as much as I want to go into counseling and help people, I really like the preventative measures or the at risk, those primary and secondary people that I can be able to kind of work with and help them to know what they can do before things start getting bad. This is actually one of the reasons why I chose to be in this major. I grew up in a family that wasn't the best. My parents' marriage almost failed a couple of times, and I wanted to know what I could do to prevent that from happening in my marriage. And so, being in this major, I mean, most of it is just acquiring knowledge, and that's really what I would want to do, is just kind of pass along the knowledge that I have gained in hopes that it would help somebody else, and they want to prevent something from happening in their family. Abilities that I would have in taking on this role, obviously, I have some experience in just wanting to gain that knowledge. I think also one of my talents that I have is to be able to put people at ease and just to make them feel comfortable in a situation. And so I feel like it's really important to, when you are facilitating a discussion, to have an environment that is emotionally safe, not just physically safe, but emotionally safe as well. And so that they'll be able to open communicate and have more of a discussion rather than teachers. I also, like I said, I've acquired a lot of knowledge, especially being at BYU Idaho. The knowledge that I have has a lot to do with how religion plays into family relationships and those kinds of things, but I also know a lot about statistics and how statistics are skewed. And I would like to help people to understand statistics and where those statistics come from. And instead of looking solely at the statistics, be able to look at the actual study that was done and the results that came from that, so they can understand that sometimes the results are misinterpreted, and that's why we have crazy accusations such as 50% of marriages end in divorce, which we all know that is not even close to being true. It's close to 87% of people tend to be happy in their marriage. Also, I think another thing that could help benefit me in doing those kinds of things and facilitating discussions like that is I love people very easily. I can make those connections rather quickly, and I can build those trust bonds rather quickly as well. I remember being on a bus one time in Switzerland on my mission, and I sat down next to this lady and asked how she was doing, and she just spilled her guts. She's told me about her whole life, and she said, I don't even know who you are. And she goes, but I feel comfortable talking to you. And I had known her for about 30 seconds before she started telling me all this stuff. So I know that I'm very good at just being there for people and building that trust right away. Another thing that I have is I have a burning passion for the family and strengthening the family. And I have such a strong testimony of it being the fundamental unit of society, because it is the fundamental, it's the most important thing in society. And I think people are kind of losing losing that vision of it being the fundamental unit of society. But I feel like because of the love that I have and the testimony that I have, I feel to pass that forward. Another thing that I have learned, talking about the primary and secondary, what are they called? Just the 3 levels of prevention. In a primary one, I am a firm believer that educating myself, I can prevent a problem, or I can just become more aware so I can see it coming on and I cannot freak out as much as when it happens. Um, it has already helped me immensely in my marriage. Um, and also in preparing for marriage. I was talking to my husband just the other day, and he's like, "We never took a marriage prep class." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I have been studying marriage and family for the last 4 years of my life. And so, and then also being on a mission, like that was marriage prep to me too. Um, and so it's just been really interesting. I can take the knowledge that I have and be able to prepare myself for oncoming events, natural events like marriage, having children, or the death of a loved one, how to kind of cope with those things. Then talked about like the secondary. I also talked about this. I kind of like the secondary because it gives you something to go off of. I've had a lot of friends approach me about things that are bothering them and they don't know how to fix them. And so they'll ask me for advice, and I appreciate that they come to me, and it's nice to be able to have a foundation of knowledge that I can kind of pass along to them. But it gives me something to work with, a direction to go. Whereas being a part of a preventative program, it's not always so direct. They don't know what they're going to encounter. Whereas in secondary, they're encountering and they're trying to prevent it from getting any worse. And so I kind of like being able to have a focus, and that the participant comes up with the focus and they can really kind of just share their experience, and then we can collaborative discussion about how possible solutions to that problem. Um, let's see, what else can I talk about? Another thing is, it talked a lot about identifying the problem, or or a need of the target audience and how important that is. And I just couldn't help but think of my mission. I think about all the investigators who they have problems in their lives. Sometimes they have problems with drinking. Sometimes they have family problems. Sometimes they have been Catholic for 16 generations, and if they get baptized, they're going to be shunned from their family. A lot of them have been divorced. Some of them just, I mean, everybody has all sorts of problems. But it was interesting to me that how on the mission we had to figure out, we addressed their problems one by one, but we had to figure out what their problem was before we could help them. And so I feel like it's the same way when you're teaching people about marriage and family. It's important for you to know what they're struggling with so that you can help them. Had you not known what they're struggling with, it's really hard to set a goal, to see an outcome, to make a plan even of what you're going. You don't know what the problem is. Something that was emphasized a lot in my mission is you teach people and not lessons. I think that's why I kind of struggle with some of the approaches that were mentioned in the book, especially, I can't remember what the first one was, but that first one where it's just basically, I'm the teacher, you're the student, this is the curriculum, I'm going to teach you the curriculum. I don't like that style. I would much rather say, this is what I have planned. What are your questions? What are your concerns? Let's make sure that your concerns are addressed, because I was taught to teach people and not just a lesson. Ways that you can go about finding out what people's problems are. It's kind of like in the family relations project that we have going on. You can take surveys. You can do a survey with people to kind of get basic information out of them, and then you can contact them and have, these intake interviews that we're going to be conducting. I think that is a great way to figure out what their problems are. It'll be kind of hard because those problems will come up as you're teaching, but it'll give you some initial ground to go on. Let's see. I also thought chapter 16 about marketing was really interesting when it was talking about family life education. I hate selling things. My father was a salesman, and I just don't like selling things. I think that's why on my mission, it was kind of hard for me to sell things. But once I kind of got around this concept of like, I'm not selling a thing, I'm selling something, I'm selling an idea, I'm selling a belief. And this belief, it has a full warranty, a guarantee that it will work. Um, so I feel like when it comes to marketing the family, again, it's an idea. It's something very real, obviously, but it's a lot like the gospel in the way that you're teaching people how to become independent, how to become self-sufficient, and be able to be happy. And I feel like that's something that I would like to do. And I feel like marketing for that would be a lot easier because it's a product that I know that is needed by pretty much everyone, whether it's in preventative stage or a secondary stage, primary, secondary, or I can't say it, the tertiary, I think is what it's called. That stage, out of all those stages, I mean, everybody lies within those three stages, and or those three levels, so everybody can learn something from family life education. And that's something I really love, is that it benefits everyone. Um, when asked if I have ever marketed a product before, yes and no at the same time. I had plenty of lemonade stands when I was a kid, and we just put up a sign, just a little piece of paper. We lived on a fairly busy street, so we always did pretty well. But the other thing is my mission. Again, we're marketing the gospel basically. And one thing that I really learned is people don't know how much you care, or people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I feel like that is extremely important, especially in marketing. Um, for example, if you conducted a class or just some sort of discussion in your community, and people didn't feel like you really cared about them, it was just kind of a general thing, you didn't get to know their problems or anything, that, I mean, they're gonna walk away from that and they're just gonna be like, that was a waste of an hour of my life. Like, I could have been watching home, watching the baseball game or whatever. But when you make something that's, speaking of baseball, when you have something that's beneficial, something that is useful, something that is applicable to your audience, they're gonna take that in and they're gonna talk about it and they're gonna share it with their friends, and their friends are gonna be like, well, where did you learn this? And then they'll tell them about the discussion that they had with you. And that's, I mean, like we read in our book, word of mouth is the best advertising you can do. And it's true. I mean, you look at companies like Mary Kay, never had any TV advertisements, anything in a magazine, anything like that. It's all been word of mouth. And look how big that company has gotten. So many women and men purchase things from them all the time, and they have parties all the time, and it's a big deal. It's a huge company. It's a huge market, and people are, I mean, they sell things that people make up that's going to be around forever. It's only going to be a bigger market as time goes on. But definitely word of mouth. And so if you can make an impact on your audience, that is going to be the best marketing that you can do. I already talked about this when it talked about the approaches in chapter 1. And I think my favorite approach would be the collaborator approach, where you would go in and you have some sort of structure. And these always have been my favorite kind of teachers too, where they go in and they have a structure, and then they ask their students, okay, well, what do you want to get out of this semester? What is your goal? What kinds of things do you want to learn? And we'll make sure that we talk about them. And so I feel like that is the best way to approach it, to get your audience, your participants involved, so that they'll want to come back, that they'll want to keep coming, because they're enjoying what they're learning and they're able to apply, and it's applicable to them directly in their life situation at that time. The last things that I wanted to address is what is needed to motivate people, and what role do you play in that motivation process. You know, the only thing I can really think of is there has to be a purpose. In the book, it kind of talked about answering the question, "What's in it for me?" And I feel like that's motivates people. If it's not going to be applicable to them, they're not going to want to keep coming, and they're not going to want to do the things that you've asked them to do. And I think the way that you ask people to do things, because you're gonna ask them to do things to get better, whether it's to write down something or to go and share this with somebody else. You're gonna ask them to do things so that they can learn, so they can apply what they're learning. And where does that motivation come from? Is if they feel like it's meaningful. I know sometimes people don't think it's meaningful until they try it. The only thing that you can do is you can invite. And I think it's all in the phrasing that you do so. I know on the mission, I refer to that a lot, and I learned a lot in my mission is you invite and then you give a promise. And I feel like still within the family life education system, you can still give promises. They're not eternal promises that you would give on the mission type of thing, but you can give promises. That their communication, if they do something, and their communication will improve, and you can promise them that, especially if you've had personal experience in that. And then I think the biggest thing is that you follow up with them the next week or with the next time that you meet, because if they don't feel like you're going to follow up with them, then they're not going to be motivated. I mean, it's just like turning in an assignment. If you're not held accountable for that assignment, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be motivated. I don't do volunteer assignments very often because I have 10 million other things to do. But if they know that you're going to follow up and you're going to ask sincerely, like, hey, how did this go? Then they're going to want to do it, because they're not going to want to stand up there and feel stupid that they didn't do something that you had asked them to do, that you had invited them to do. So that's kind of where my learning is going at this time. I'm really enjoying it, and that's all I have to say about this. So let's see. Alrighty, well, thanks. We'll see you next time.